In 2026, war clouds loomed over the Persian Gulf. US carrier strike groups and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard were on the brink of war. A conflict that could reshape the world seemed imminent. The world held its breath, awaiting the first shot fired in the Middle East. But at this critical juncture, then US President Trump suddenly boarded Air Force One bound for Beijing. This decision by the White House, risking the wrath of allies and domestic hawks, embarked on an extremely mysterious trip to the East. What exactly is he trying to do? Is it a show of weakness to his biggest strategic rival before the war? Or is there a shocking, untold deal behind it all? Today, we will dissect this trip layer by layer to reveal the shocking true purpose behind this high-risk visit Act 1. Igniting the crisis. The story begins on the 28th of February 2026. On this day, the US military, in conjunction with the Israel Defense Forces, launched Operation Epic Wrath, conducting several rounds of precision airstrikes against Iran's nuclear facilities and military command centers. The core target of the operation was Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Within hours, breaking news from major media outlets around the world confirmed Khamenei's death, shocking the entire world. Iran's reaction was predictably furious. The newly appointed hardline leader directly threatened endless revenge against the United States and all its interests in the Middle East. Global oil prices surged by over 40% overnight, and the financial markets experienced violent turmoil, reminiscent of the oil crisis of the last century. Immediately afterward, Iranian proxy forces launched deadly attacks on US bases in Iraq and Syria, killing several American soldiers. Following the attacks, Trump delivered a hawkish speech at the White House, stating that the war could take 4 weeks to end. This statement conveniently points to early April. Just when tensions were running high and everyone thought a protracted war was brewing, a piece of news that shocked everyone arrived. Trump would pay a state visit to China from March 31st to April 2nd. A US president directing a war, going to visit what he called the only ever-present threat. This signal was so contradictory and complex that politicians in Washington, Taipei, Tokyo, and Brussels were completely baffled. What was he really up to? Act 2. The dangerous balance. To understand Trump's risky move, we must first understand which dangerous balancing act he was treading on. This balancing act was woven from 3 intersecting lines: war, the economy, and Taiwan. The first line of defense is war. While the assassination of Iran was tactically successful, it dragged the United States into a massive strategic quagmire. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi immediately and publicly stated China's 2 unacceptable points. First, an attack while negotiations were ongoing. Second, the assassination of the supreme leader of a sovereign nation. Although these were diplomatic statements, Beijing's anger and stance were clearly expressed. China even warned through diplomatic channels that a leader waging war visiting China was inconsistent with China's basic diplomatic principles. This means that Trump's trip to Beijing could be cancelled at any time. He would have to offer Beijing some kind of guarantee or exchange to secure the visit, thereby stabilizing China and preventing China from providing war support to Iran, a nightmare for Washington. The second line of thought is the economy. Trump's second term inherited a trade war mess from his first. In 2025, the punitive tariffs he imposed on Chinese goods, reaching as high as 125%, were ruled illegal by the US Supreme Court, almost crippling his economic leverage against China. Simultaneously, US inflation remained high, and the war with Iran exacerbated the situation with energy prices, pushing the US economy to the brink of recession. Trump knew better than anyone that to wage an expensive war while simultaneously stabilizing the domestic economy, he needed China's cooperation. According to later disclosures, the agenda for this visit clearly included several key items, demanding that China resume purchasing hundreds of Boeing aircraft, import large quantities of US soybeans, and make significant concessions on fentanyl controls. This was no simple commercial negotiation. It was a strategic deal within the context of a war economy. The final and the most crucial line is politics and Taiwan. This is precisely where the contradictions of the Trump administration are most evident. On the one hand, his Secretary of Defense, He Ji, during his visit to the Indo-Pacific region, relentlessly promoted the China threat theory and actively pushed forward the so-called 3C linkage strategy, which involves coordinating forces in the East China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, and the South China Sea to comprehensively contain China. The Trump administration's interim national defense strategic guidance explicitly shifted the strategic focus towards the Indo-Pacific region, defining China as the United States' primary long-term challenge. On the other hand, just before his planned visit to China, the Pentagon suddenly released a startling piece of news. A $20 billion arms sale to Taiwan was indefinitely suspended. The official explanation was to create a favorable atmosphere for high-level interactions between the US and China. This has kept Taiwan strategic analysts up all night. Such a significant arms sale could be thwarted by a single visit. Does this mean that Taiwan's security has quietly transformed from a necessity based on threat assessment into a pawn on the chessboard of the US-China power game, ready to be moved or even exchanged at any time. War, economy, and Taiwan, three tightropes intertwined, and Trump is working on them, his destination being Beijing. Act 3. Unveiling the true purpose. When we piece these three threads together, the shocking real purpose behind Trump's visit to China begins to emerge. It is not a single objective, but a strategic intent encompassing three layers. The first and most superficial purpose was to prolong the war and seek economic support. This is the most direct interpretation. Trump knows that a war with Iran would be a huge drain on resources. Soaring oil prices and strained global supply chains would directly impact the already fragile US economy. Therefore, his primary task during his trip to Beijing was to stabilize China, the world's largest energy buyer and manufacturing hub. He needed to assure Xi Jinping that the US-Iran war would not spiral out of control or affect China's core interests. In exchange for China's neutrality in international forums such as the UN and its refusal to provide devastating aid to Iran. Simultaneously, by securing mega deals on Boeing aircraft and soybeans, he could showcase his trading prowess to the nation and appease Wall Street and voters in agricultural states. In short, he was using Chinese money to fuel the US war economy. This was a pure wartime deal, with a clear objective and brutal methods, perfectly in line with Trump's businessman nature. The second level is a deeper and more strategic objective, to stage a major reversal of the strategy of uniting with China to contain Iran. This sounds unbelievable, but many strategic observers speculate so. While the Trump administration views China as its primary adversary, Trump himself is an extreme pragmatist. Is it possible he wants to replicate Nixon's visit to China, attempting to ally with China to contain the Soviet Union? Only this time, he wants to play the ally with China to contain Iran game. His calculations might be this: by making significant concessions to China on certain issues, such as tariffs, or even by creating ambiguity on the Taiwan issue, he can gain decisive pressure from China on Iran. China is Iran's most important economic partner. If Beijing cooperates with US sanctions and cuts off oil purchases and financial support to Iran, Tehran's war machine will quickly stall. This is too tempting for Trump, who wants a quick victory and to avoid getting bogged down in the Middle East. He may want to send a signal to Beijing: you are our long-term enemy. But now, can we first cease hostilities and work together to resolve this Iranian problem? According to some scattered reports, Trump even hopes to extend the truce agreement reached with China last year for another year. This approach of engaging in tactical cooperation with long-term adversaries for short-term gains is extremely risky, but it is certainly very Trump-like. However, the two objectives mentioned above are insufficient to explain all the oddities of this visit, especially the massive arms sale to Taiwan that was suspended. This leads to the third and deepest and most shocking true objective: to use the Iraq war as a cover to complete the maximum pressure and redefinition of the Taiwan Strait strategy. This is the most dangerous move in the entire game. In a public speech, Trump seemingly casually mentioned that he was discussing future arms sales to Taiwan with President Xi Jinping and would make a decision soon. This statement caused a major upheaval in Taiwanese politics. Because of this, the US president essentially overturned one of the 6 assurances to Taiwan since 1982 that the United States has never agreed to consult the People's Republic of China on arms sales to Taiwan. This means that, for Trump, Taiwan's defense is no longer a matter that the US can decide unilaterally, but has become a bargaining chip in negotiations with Beijing, combined with the suspended $20 billion arms sale. A clearer picture emerges. Trump isn't showing weakness to China at all. He's playing a high-stakes gamble of maximum pressure. He's essentially saying to Beijing, look, I'm willing to suspend arms sales to Taiwan for the sake of our relationship. Now, let's see what you'll give me in return. What price are you willing to pay on Iran and on economic issues? At the same time, he is also exerting maximum pressure on Taiwan. His message to Taipei is, don't take American protection for granted. Your security depends on my deal with Beijing. If you don't obey or can't provide the benefit the US needs, such as full cooperation in the semiconductor supply chain, your fate may be decided in a single handshake between me and Xi Jinping. Trump even publicly stated that Xi Jinping's actions on the Taiwan issue are up to him, but he has told Xi that he would be very unhappy if force is used. While these words sound tough, they actually relinquish the initiative and are full of implications of a deal. Therefore, the outbreak of the US-Iran war may not have been merely a geopolitical accident. It was more like a carefully chosen opportunity, a giant smokescreen. It attracted global attention and created a sufficient sense of crisis, allowing Trump to quietly undermine the cornerstone he had always wanted to change, but dared not easily touch the US policy toward Taiwan and the overall Indo-Pacific strategy. So, why did Trump visit China during the Iraq war? On the surface, it's about economic interests, using Chinese orders to fuel the war effort. At the middle level, it's about geopolitics, playing a dangerous game of uniting with China to contain Iran. But the deepest and most shocking purpose is to use the war as cover to completely trade over the Taiwan issue, reshaping Sino-US relations in this way, and testing the loyalty and obedience of allies in the entire Indo-Pacific region. This visit marks a complete shift in an era. It reveals that, under the logic of America First, traditional alliances, ideologies, and strategic commitments can all be replaced by naked calculations of self-interest. It declares to the world that on the chessboard of great power rivalry, there are no longer immutable rules. All pieces can be revalued in the face of certain great deals. Taiwan's security no longer depends solely on its own defense and U.S. legal commitments, but also on its value in this global chessboard. A disturbing reality is that no amount of weaponry can outweigh a single deal between the White House's occupants and its adversaries. Trump's visit to China was like a sharp knife, slicing through the veil of warmth and friendliness in modern international relations to reveal the cold and cruel nature of the underlying exchange of interests. The course of this game continues to profoundly influence the world we live in. The course of this grand strategy continues to influence us. What do you think Trump's true motives are? Is it purely economic considerations, or is there a deeper geopolitical conspiracy at play? Feel free to leave your analysis in the comment section and discuss it with us. If you enjoyed today's content, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to receive our in-depth analysis of the complex international situation. See you next time.